Look, I've been watching this circus we call American politics for decades now, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the clowns never really leave the tent. They just swap out their red noses for orange spray tans and pretend the show's over. But here's the kicker. Donald J. Trump, the self-proclaimed king of comebacks, might just pack his gold-plated bags and hightail it out of Dodge come 2028. Yeah, you read that right. Not because he's suddenly developed a conscience or a taste for humility, but because the walls he spent a lifetime building around his fragile empire are finally crumbling. And even a man who brags about dodging bullets might not stick around to face the firing squad of accountability. Let's get real for a second. We're talking about a guy who's turned fugitive from justice into a punchline before it even became his reality. Remember the hush money trial, the classified documents farce at Mar-a-Lago, the Georgia election interference, mess that's still unraveling like a cheap suit. By November 2025, as we sit here nursing our collective hangover from whatever fresh hell the 2024 election dumped on us, Trump's legal ledger looks less like a rap sheet and more like the unabridged edition of War and Crimes. Convictions stacking up like unpaid bills at a casino he used to own. And if he somehow claws his way back into the White House, because let's face it, stranger things have happened in this fever dream of a republic, those 4 years will be his last golden parachute. Immunity while in office. Sure, the Supreme Court's latest gift to aspiring autocrats might buy him time. But January 20, 2029, that's when the clock strikes midnight, the carriage turns back into a pumpkin, and suddenly, every prosecutor from Manhattan to Moscow is sharpening their pencils. Why flee? Because Trump's not the type to rot in a cell block with the common folk. He's the guy who stiffed contractors, bankrupted casinos, and turned bankruptcy into a lifestyle brand. Flight isn't defeat for him, it's strategy. Picture it, a private jet touching down in some sun-soaked exile where extradition treaties are as optional as a prenup in his world. Saudi Arabia, they've got the oil money to match his ego and the palaces to house his grievances. Russia, Putin owes him 1 or 10 for all those genius bromances. Or hell, maybe it's the UAE, where skyscrapers pierce the sky like his inflated net worth claims, and the only law is the one printed on petrodollars. These aren't wild guesses, they're patterns. Look at the oligarchs who have danced this tango before, fleeing sanctions, laundering reputations, and toasting their freedom with champagne that costs more than most Americans' mortgages. But don't kid yourself into thinking this is just about one bloated billionaire dodging the reaper. This is the rot at the heart of our so-called democracy, the kind that festers when power becomes a family heirloom passed down like a bad toupee. Trump's potential bolt isn't born in a vacuum. It's the inevitable endpoint of a system that's spent years winking at white-collar felonies while hammering the poor for petty theft. We've got a former president indicted on 91 felony counts. 91. And half the country treats it like a WWE SmackDown rather than the existential threat it is. Meanwhile, the other half cheers it on, not because they believe in justice, but because Schadenfreude is the only joy left in this polarized hellscape. Independent media. Ha. We're all just yelling into the void now, trying to remind folks that the rule of law isn't a partisan piñata to whack when your team's up to bat. Dig deeper, and you'll see the blueprint for this escape hatch was drawn years ago. Remember how Trump floated the idea of a third term, not as a joke, but as a trial balloon for the base, testing how far he could stretch the Constitution before it snapped like a worn-out rubber band. When that flopped, shocker, he pivoted to dynasty mode, grooming Don Jr., or whoever's got the least felony exposure that week. But 2028 isn't about legacy, it's about survival. Post-presidency, the Southern District of New York doesn't care about your Secret Service detail or your Twitter tantrums. They've got receipts, wire fraud, tax evasion, the whole 9 yards of grift that built Trump Tower. And internationally, forget it. The guys already persona non grata in half of Europe after January 6th turned the capital into a bad cosplay of the Reichstag fire. One wrong move, and Interpol's knocking. Now the optimists, and God bless them for their rose-colored blinders, will say, "Nah, Trump's too stubborn. He'd rather die on the golf course ranting about rigged elections than slink off like a coward." Fair point. Narcissism is his North Star. The man once called himself the chosen one. Under a biblical sky, fleeing would mean admitting defeat, and defeat is for losers, as he loves to remind us. But here's the blunt truth. Survival trumps ego every time when the alternative is a jumpsuit that doesn't come in extra-large comb-over. Look at history's rogues gallery. Richard Nixon didn't exactly flee, but he spent his twilight years muttering to the ghosts of Watergate in San Clemente, a voluntary exile from relevance. Trump. He'd make it fabulous. Yacht parties with Epstein's ghosts, podcasts with Bannon, and a memoir titled Asterisk Fleeing with Style. How I Outsmarted the Deep State, again, asterisk. And let's not pretend the enablers wouldn't grease the wheels. The MAGA machine is a well-oiled beast, fueled by dark money and darker loyalties. Expect a GoFundMe for Trump's Liberty Flight that raises billions overnight, or a sudden diplomatic posting to some friendly dictatorship disguised as a think tank gig. Hell, Elon Musk might even loan him a SpaceX rocket, destination Mars, where laws are as thin as the atmosphere. The point is, this isn't hypothetical. It's the logical extension of a political ecosystem where loyalty oaths replace oaths of office, and accountability is for the little people. But zoom out, folks, because this isn't just Trump's story, it's ours. A nation that elects a man under FBI investigation, then watches him potentially jet off into sunset exile, has some serious soul-searching to do. What does it say about us when the Oval Office becomes a revolving door for reprobates? That we've normalized the abnormal, that both sides isn't a false equivalence, but a damning indictment of our collective apathy. Democrats wring their hands about norms while packing the courts with their own ideologues. Republicans scream witch hunt as their hero torches the village to save his bacon. Independent voices like mine. We're the skunks at the garden party, pointing out that the real scandal isn't one man's flight risk. It's a system so broken that we're debating whether a president should be above the law or just have a better lawyer. Consider the global ripple effects. America's been the cop on the beat since World War II, preaching democracy like a televangelist with a bad toupee. If Trump pulls a rabbit-out-of-hat trick and vanishes to some tax haven paradise in 2028, that sermon rings hollow. Allies like the UK or Germany, already side-eyeing our MAGA fever, will accelerate their pivot to multipolar realism, cutting deals with Beijing while we chase shadows. Adversaries. They'll pop the cork on that vintage Putin vodka, toasting the confirmation that the U.S. is just another paper tiger with a Twitter addiction. And the American people will be left holding the bag, higher tariffs if he wins and implements his revenge fantasy, or a flood of embittered exiles if he loses and bolts. Either way, the middle class foots the bill, as always. I won't sugarcoat it. This scenario terrifies me not because I hate Trump, though, let's be honest, the feeling's mutual, but because it exposes the fragility of the American experiment. We're not invincible, we're just arrogant enough to think we are. The founders baked in checks and balances to prevent kings, not to enable con men. Yet here we are, 248 years in, debating whether a twice-impeached felon gets a get-out-of-jail-free card via Gulfstream. It's enough to make you wonder if Jefferson and Madison are spinning in their graves or just binge-watching Asterisk, The Handmaid's Tale asterisk, with a knowing nod. So what do? First, stop treating politics like a reality show. Demand better from our leaders, not perfection, but basic human decency. Second, shore up the institutions. Campaign finance reform to starve the beast of billionaire bucks, independent prosecutors who don't fold like cheap lawn chairs under pressure. Third, and this one's for you, the reader, vote like your future depends on it, because it does. And read widely, wildly, beyond the echo chambers. Independent media isn't sexy, it's essential. We're the watchdogs nipping at heels, not the lapdogs lapping up scraps. As for Trump himself, if he does try to flee in 2028, I say manhunt, rip off the Band-Aid, watch the pus flow, and start healing. But mark my words, he'd be back, tweeting from a bunker about how it was all a hoax, the plane a deepfake, the indictments fake news. Because for Donald Trump, exile isn't an end, it's just intermission. The show's never over until the fat lady, or in this case, the tangerine tycoon, sings. And if she does, we'll be here, independent as ever, calling it like we see it. No fear, no favor, just the unvarnished truth. Because in a world of spin, blunt honesty is the ultimate rebellion. Wait, that's not the end, far from it. Let's drill down into the mechanics of how this flight might actually play out, because speculation without substance is just barstool chatter, and I'm not here to peddle that. Start with the timeline. Assume the impossible happens. Trump wins in 2024, rides a wave of economic voodoo and cultural grievance back to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. His first term 2.0 is a blitzkrieg, pardons for the Jan. 6 crew, gutted DOJ, maybe even a constitutional amendment floated to extend terms, because why not swing for the fences when the bases are loaded with sycophants? By 2026, the midterms roll around and the backlash hits like a freight train. Blue wave. Maybe not, but enough cracks in the red wall to make the RNC sweat. Trump's response: double down raids on media outlets, emergency powers invoked for everything from border walls to ballot boxes. But the courts, even the ones he stacked, start pushing back. Leaks from within. White House counsel whispering about looming post-term indictments that make the Stormy Daniels saga look like a parking ticket. Enter 2027, the lame duck scramble. Allies in Congress float bills to grant retroactive immunity, call it the Trump Legacy Act, a pork barrel pardon disguised as patriotism. It fails spectacularly, because even some Republicans have kids who might one day want to live in a country not run by vendettas. Panic sets in. That's when the whispers start. Sir, there's a villa in Dubai, no extradition, and the golf courses. World class. Logistics. Child's play for a man who's turned real estate into a verb. Private air fleet on standby, fueled by shell companies nested like Russian dolls. Baggage. Not just clothes, but servers full of insurance files. Compromat on everyone from Pelosi to Pence. Leverage for a soft landing. The family. Melania's already half checked out, eye on European shadows. Ivanka's plotting her post-daddy brand relaunch in Toronto. The boys. Cannon fodder, staying stateside to run interference. The flight itself. Inauguration day for the next guy, Harris 2.0 or whatever fresh face the Dems cough up. Trump's motorcade doesn't head to Andrews. It veers south to Palm Beach. From there, a chopper to the yacht, then a midnight hop across the Atlantic. Social media blackout imposed by who? The FCC under his hand-picked chair. Or just the platform owner's bending knee one last time. The aftermath, chaos symphony. Protests in D.C., riots in red states, a constitutional crisis that makes Bush v. Gore look like a playground spat. Biden or whoever's left invokes the 25th. No, too late. The Secret Service, they're loyal but not suicidal. Internationally, the UN convenes an emergency session. But it's all theater. Resolutions without teeth, because who wants to extradite a nuclear-armed ghost? Domestically, the healing begins or doesn't. A truth commission, maybe, a la South Africa's post-apartheid model, airing the grievances without the guillotines. Or vengeance cycles, with blue state ags chasing Trump kin like hounds on a fox hunt. Either way, the scar tissue builds. Trust in elections at rock bottom, faith in leaders in the toilet. But here's the independent writer's twist. No heroes, no villains, just humans fumbling in the dark. Trump's flight wouldn't be the end of American exceptionalism. It'd be the admission that it was always a myth, propped up by myths. We'd rebuild messily, because that's what we do. From the ashes of Watergate came FOIA, from Teapot Dome, campaign laws. It'd birth something fiercer, a demand for transparency that doesn't bend for billionaires. In the end, if Trump flees, it's not his victory, it's our wake-up call. And I'll be right here, pen in hand, attitude intact, reminding you that the real power's never been in Mar-a-Lago or Moscow. It's in us, the unbowed, the unbreakable everyday Americans who refuse to let one man's getaway steal our story. Be damned, this needed saying. Stay vigilant, friends. The jet engines are warming up. Wait, no, let's keep going, and this fire's still burning. Let's talk brass tacks, the legal labyrinth he'd be dodging. Take the New York civil fraud case, $464 million judgment, ballooning with interest like his ego after a rally. Post-presidency, that's not appealable into oblivion. It's collectible via asset seizures that could turn Trump Tower into a co-op for the displaced. Then the federal election subversion charges. Jack Smith's got a dossier thicker than the art of the deal, with witnesses from Meadows to Milley ready to testify that "Stop the Steal" was code for "Storm the Steal." Fleeing neuters that. Sovereign immunity in exile. Not quite, but good luck enforcing a U.S. warrant in a country where the ruler's your golf buddy. And the emoluments clause violations. Chump change compared to the RICO racketeering suit brewing in Georgia, where Fannie Willis is painting a picture of a crime family that makes The Sopranos look like the Waltons. Psychologically, it's a match. Trump's always been a sprinter, not a marathoner, ducking drafts, divorces, debts. Staying to fight means facing the mirror, and that reflection's no longer the winner staring back. Exile lets him rewrite the narrative, persecuted prophet, not pursued pariah. His base buys it hook, line, and sinker. Donations pour in for Operation Freedom Flight, funding everything from legal fees abroad to luxury bunkers. Critics on the left, they'll crow victory, but it's Pyrrhic. Letting him slip away validates the asymmetry. Elites evade, masses endure. On the right, it's martyrdom fuel, see, the swamp's real, perpetuating the divide. Independents like me see the trap. Outrage as opiate, distracting from systemic fixes like term limits or rank choice voting. Globally, it's a gift to authoritarians. Bolsonaro's already taking notes in Brazil, Orban's smirking in Hungary. The message: steal elections, stockpile grievances, and when the heat's on, hop a plane. Democracy dies not with a bang, but with a whoosh of jet exhaust. So, yeah, concern is warranted, but concern without action is complicity. Push for reforms now, electoral integrity laws with teeth, not tweets. Support journalists who dig, not demagogue. And remember, Trump's not the disease, he's the symptom. Cure the body politic or watch the patient flatline. Santiago del Carmen Maria.